You know, we've had 3 great years of funding from Congress to help us restore readiness, and we've seen double-digit gains in terms of our readiness. And so I'm very confident that were we to be involved in major conflict today, we would prevail. But budget is always a concern, and our duty is to continue to tell our story, not only to Congress, but to the American people, and to make sure we make the case as to why those resources are important. By the same token, it's important for us, Army leaders, to be good stewards of the taxpayers' hard-earned dollars. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're very conscious of how we spend those dollars. So the 3 priorities that we have outlined in the Army has been number 1, readiness, number 2, modernization, and then number 3 is reform. And reform is all about being better stewards so we can free up time, money, and manpower to put back into number 1 and number 2. So that's probably the biggest thing that I focus on right now. And then always, you know, I emphasize speed, speed, speed. We need to get to that next generation of vehicles and equipment and weapons, and we need to do our best to make sure our soldiers are well trained and well prepared. And then it goes without saying that we got to continue to take care of our families. It's being an Army spouse is probably the toughest job in the Army, and being an Army kid isn't easy either. So we got to balance all these things to make sure that we continue to remain the best Army the world has ever seen. Well, you know, the Army has identified 6 modernization priorities based on what we've learned from our own analysis of warfare, looking at the conflicts in Ukraine, anticipating what near-peer competitors may or may not present to us in the future. And so those priorities begin with long-range precision fires. Next is next-generation combat vehicle, which will have a big impact on mechanized infantry. And then it runs all the way through down to the one closest to my heart, soldier lethality. Well, Fort Benning plays a central role in that. Let me back up by saying the renaissance that is underway is this renewal, if you will, in all that we do in the Army: training, maintaining, modernizing our force, improving our doctrine, and how we train soldiers. And so just look at Fort Benning. It's involved in many aspects of that. We are training soldiers differently through this one-station unit training. It now makes it the longest and toughest infantry basic training in the world, and it's the first time we have ever done this as an Army, as best I can tell. So that's number 1. Number 2, the doctrinal changes that are coming here out of Fort Benning are important too to our multi-domain operations. It's that new doctrine that will help us prevail in future conflict against near-peer competitors such as Russia and China. And so doctrinally it's important. If you look at the growth at Fort Benning with the first SFAB, the first SFAB has been integral to our economy of force efforts in Afghanistan. It's allowed us to preserve the integrity of infantry brigade combat teams so that they are ready for great power conflict, and at the same time helped us provide trained and ready and specially selected officers and NCOs to help with our Afghan partners. So those are just a few examples of how Fort Benning is playing a critical role in this renaissance.